Hi, this is what is due for week 8. I want to go into a few things as you see it, but all I want you to paint is the mirror. Do you see the mirror? It's all I want you to paint, and I'll show you that that's all I want you to paint for this week. But I want you to understand, for those of you who have not had me for Intro to Photoshop, the painting theory. And this is a refresher for those who have had me. So what we're going to do is first I'm going to show you what is due. So you're going to turn in this file. In this file, I have a Brian folder where I've painted the mirror, as well as I've painted the window in the car. You don't have to do that. But then the identical layers are in a student folder with the masks, but they're blank. Everything's blank. You have to paint it as you watch my movie. Now, my movie's a little bit dated, but Photoshop hasn't changed in the painting aspect of it. Sure, there's different tools and palettes and everything else, and I may not say the quick keys when I go to paint for PC, but remember, when I say Command on a Mac, it's Control on a PC. When I say Option on a Mac, it's Alt on a PC. And Shift is the same for Mac and PC. So, for those of you that have PCs and you're watching when I show you the painting movie on the actual painting of the mirror, just remember, when I say Command, it means Control. When I say Alt, when I say Option, it means Alt. Okay, so this is the syllabus, of course, and we're going to advance the syllabus quickly to the week for number 8, and you can see it's the painted mirror. Now, let's go to week 8. And again, there's only 2 things due, as well as a mid-semester survey. There is the painted mirror PSD, which you better put your name on it. Don't just hand it in as painted mirror. And then the painted mirror discussion summary and the mid-semester survey. So that is what is due for week 8. But there's much more to this for even you designers who don't feel you need to learn how to paint. I can promise you that in a multimedia world, you do need to know how to manipulate your own files so that you stay profitable and that you're an asset to your employer. Okay, so very first thing I'm going to do after I move down this recording is I'm going to click on the Painted Mirror Assets zip. Okay, because inside I have something that I want you to see. So I'm going to download it to the screen. And after it downloads all the way, I want you all to watch this movie that I have inside that has nothing to do with the mirror, but has everything to do with you understanding the process. So it's right in the zip, so you can keep it. But it's the Toaster step-by-step MP4 movie, which actually a student painted. Now, what I want to do is play it. And I want you to see the painting theory as it happens. Now look at this shape. Look at this shape. It is filled, and let's concentrate on the front area of this red toaster. It's filled with large red shapes. As you're painting the large shapes and working your way to your small shapes, you ignore the small shapes until you have to paint them. And that's why I have a clicky copy, which is an original copy of the photo as the highest layer, and you'll see what I'm talking about if you haven't already known what I'm talking about. But let me play this first. There's no sound, and I'm going to play it one at a time. But look at how in real time you can see the layers build to the very last layers. Okay, and some of the stuff is a copy of what it was, meaning the button on the right, the dial on the right is just a copy for the dial on the left. Now, I'm going to stop it because I want to advance it to here. So here is the very first thing. It's the base layer for the red. Now, as I advance this, please watch how the red turns into a lighter red. Then, which means the person had to draw that shape. Then it turns into the gray on the outer side. You see the gray that's happening right there on the outer side? Well, that's a layer that's underneath the red. Okay? It's not a thin line of gray. It's a big fill. But since it's underneath the red, it looks like a thin line. Now let's go to the top, which are just copies. You can see the top has copies of those gray shapes. Then there's the little dots, which they could have left as the highest layer, but then they painted that, and then they duplicated it for that side. So now we have 3 bottom or 4 bottom layers with 5 or 6 top layers. The little shapes are the top layers. Now you have this big gray, look at this big gray, which turns into the 2 buttons and the little black dials, which they didn't paint 2 of the white things. They did 1 and they duplicated the layer. Then they did 1 for the slot and they duplicated it. Now, look at how they lightened up on that. Now that's underneath all that detail. So the little stuff is still layers on top. Okay? Then they went ahead and they, I'm keeping on painting now, they added a little bit of detail over to the left-hand side of the red. You see it? Now, let's get into, after they're painting that detail, look at how they build to the buttons, to the dials, and to the slider things. So look at how they're building. That's a perfect example here of big white to big black, to gray inside the black, you see the right hand side, to even lighter gray. Then you have a black shape. Now watch this. See that gray shape that's on top that completes the drawing on that? Then another 2 on top shapes and a white. So the white is the last shape. Do you understand? They didn't have to work around the white. They did what I call painting through the shapes, because this is going to be a higher layer. It's going to complete the drawing. Then they just duplicated it. Look at how they're finishing it off. Now they took all of that and they duplicated it for that side. So those are the same layers. They just duplicated them. So they just had them in 2 different folders. Now look at how they finished off the top buttons, working to the small detail. Look at how they're finishing off all the top. Look at how those 2 white layers right there, look at how beautiful that is. That completes that. And then they have the final painting on the sides. Now, when you're all finished with this, it looks like a finished product, but that's not what the artist saw. The artist saw shapes. Now, that's what I want you to study. Now, I'm going to close this, and we're going to open up the student mirror because I want to show you something. Okay, so in Photoshop, let me hit the F key. Now I'm going to put the swatches over here because they're not super important to this. They are, but they're not super important. And I'm putting the channels over near the paths. Now what I've done on this is I've left everything that I painted inside for my mirror. Do you understand? Let me turn off my mirror. So here is the little reference layer, so you can see what it looks like. Okay, now here's the student mirror folder and the Brian mirror folder. Close them, but turn off mine. Okay, now I want to show you, we'll turn it on in a few minutes, but I'm going to turn off the little reference layer. And now let's back off. Let me move the layer palette over. And I realize this isn't a movie about how to paint, but since I have all of you watching this, let's get a refresher on how to paint. Now I've drawn different things here. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the window, turn off the sheet metal, turn on the clicky copy, and turn down the opacity so you can just barely see it. Now, I have these particular paths. I'll hold the Command or Control key and turn them into selections. Now I'm going to zoom in. Do you see how that selection is for the red shape? You see the red shape? In fact, let me duplicate the clicky copy and turn up the opacity so I can show you that that's for the red color. Okay, that was the very first path I drew. Now when I go and paint the rest of it, so now I'm going to paint the red. I'm holding the Command or Control key and I'm painting now for the gray shape. You see how I move down to this path right there? Then I'll move down to the inner path right there, and then I have the white, which I expanded that. So when I clicked on this red path right there, and let me make a selection of that red outer path, and let me zoom in. It's right, it should be it right there. So there is the red outer path. You can see the selection right there. Now to get it to go out to the outside so I could save it as a channel, I went to select, modify, expand. And I expanded it by about 10 pixels, I believe, if I remember the number. It was only about 6 pixels. So let's go to select, and sometimes you have to experiment like that. Let's go to expand 6 pixels. Now that I have it right on the outside of that, and you'll know why I'm doing that in a few minutes, okay? I saved it under select, save selection, and it showed up here as white outer because I named it white outer. So you're going to use paths in conjunction with saved selections, which are in channels. So back here, let me go to click this one, and that's how I painted the red. Let me command or control click on the icon for that, and that's how I painted the white. And then you can see how I move to the inside on all of these. So I use select, modify, contract for a major part of those. Now let me turn on the clicky copy so you can see, but let me turn off both of them. So now we can go to the window, and I can show you if I turn on the bottom car. Here's the sheet metal that I painted. Now let me back off on this to the best of my ability so you can see the layers that go in. Now I'll zoom in on this a little bit in a second. And your job is not, did you hear that? Not to paint the window unless you want to. And then you can tell me when you submit the file that you did both the window and the mirror. I'm only expecting the mirror. Now let me turn off, let me open the window, I didn't know what I wanted to say there, and turn off all the layers. Now I'm not going to make a selection. I'm just going to show you that I used the channel or the path to make the following layers. Look at this layer that I'm clicking on. It's the big red shape. Now when I click the clicky copy on and off, and let me throw away the clicky copy number 2 because I don't think I should have 2 of them, but let me click on the clicky copy and turn up the opacity, and I'm almost done this, so just have patience, okay? So let me turn this off. Now you can see when I turn this off and on that it's a big red shape, correct? Let me go down a little bit so I can get all of it on the screen, and I don't really need the tool palette at the moment. Okay, so this is perfect right there. Now look at the gray shape. Look at how the gray shape was a contracted selection, right? And it let me now paint the gray shape. So it's just red and gray. Now let's anticipate the next color. Well, there's a vignette of white around this gray. So let me turn this off and show you the vignette of white. You see how I just freehanded that? That was simple. Now let me turn off and on the clicky copy. Doesn't look very good yet, right? But now let's study the next shape. Oh, it's black on the top. So let's turn this off. Before I do the black on the top, I want you to see how, yes, the gray had white in it, but as it moves down, it has darkness around the bottom. So the same reason that I put this gray here, I also put the dark on the bottom. Do you understand? Now, the next shape, let's see. Oh, it's black. Well, let's turn it on. Now, what's the next shape? Oh, it's a little bit of gray. So let's move in. See how this goes? Red, red. I'll do the white in a minute. Red, gray, that vignette of white, black, gray, black, and then the window color. Now, did you hear that? That's how I want you to learn how to see shapes. That's how I do it. That's how a lot of illustrators do it. This is called painting through things so that you don't have to do a lot of work. You just have big shapes on underneath smaller shapes. So now look at how I'm painting that gray. Let me turn it off and on a couple times. See how that gray now matches exactly where I want it? Now, let's see what the next one is. Well, it's black. So let's now paint the black. Now let's see what the next one is. Oh, it's going to be, I'll turn this one on so I can tell you that in a minute, but look at how the next one, if I click this, is the window. Wow, did that clean it up? And when I said, I'll show you in a second, see how I added this gray by freehanding it over here on this visor? Now let me turn off the window. Look at how when I turn this on and off, it doesn't look so good. But let me turn the clicky copy on and you can see why I did that. I just freehanded on this layer right there. Now I had a path that I drew for the window. There it is. And then I put the shine on it. Now look at how when it all comes together, and I want you all to remember this if you haven't ever had me before, it doesn't look good until it's 70% completed. So let me go back down to here. That doesn't look very good. But now here's where I get past the 70% completion stage and look at how pretty. Now let's use the same theory exactly for how I painted the window, the mirror. So let me turn off all these layers. Now, let me turn on the little reference right there. Now what do you see here? I see a big red shape and a big black shape. So there's your big black shape. And look at here. There's several smaller layers that make up that bottom molding. But here's the big shape for the red. So here's the base value for the red. Here's the base value for the black. You're almost done. Now look at how you just need to add little bit of detail. What do you see in that black? I see a little line that's been Gaussian blurred and a little light value over here. So let's now put all three of those in. You see how I did that? You see how I have a little line of value and I actually broke it into three. I have a gray one right there and a lighter one. Okay, now let's see what the red is. Well, the red separates a horizon from top to bottom. So look at how I'm doing the pink. You see how the pink goes in? Isn't the pink bigger than the white? Well, then the pink should be a layer that's underneath the white. Correct? Correct? Well, isn't that pretty? But without these two, that doesn't look very good. So here's the 70% completed stage, and then the little red, the little dark on the bottom. You see the little darkness around the bottom left? And then I just put in the little shine over there. Now I should put in that little dot right over here as the top layer. But that's what I want you to do. And look at how easy that painting theory is. Now I realize this is just a movie to show you what to do. But since I had your attention, that's what I want you to do. Now save as here. Look, you see all first before. These are Brian's layers. Let me turn them off. Look at how inside the student mirror I have all the layers with blank masks and nothing on the layer. So when you watch me paint this red and this black layer, well, turn mine off, open yours, paint on the red mirror layer and make sure you're on the right layer before you apply color, and then the black layer. So now you're going to be able to follow exactly along with what I did. Now, this isn't, of course, a portfolio piece. This is for you to understand how to paint. So watch that toaster movie, and please watch this movie. Now let's go to the module as I end this, because I want you to see not only in the module, let me go back, not only in the module here is there, there's two support movies here. For those of you that don't understand brushes, and I think you should understand brushes, let me click back on Photoshop and go to something, because I want you to answer this question. And if you can't answer this question, then you're going to have to watch that movie, and I'll show you what it is again. Let me go to the brushes. Brush settings. Okay, it's right there. Now, I have to bring it over to the screen. Okay, so here's the brush settings. It didn't actually come over. Sorry about that. Where is my brush settings? Okay, I must have closed it. I'll go back to brush settings. Brian's having the simplest problem with just getting the brush settings window to come over here. There it is right there. Now, in the brush settings, let me hit the B key for the paintbrush. Okay. I want you to understand the difference between shape dynamics being on. First of all, here's the brush settings window. When you click brush tip shape, it's actually a menu. It's not just a header to all of these. Do you understand what I just said? So look at how when I turn off shape dynamics, it doesn't thin down the little streak on the bottom, the way that the stroke works when you paint. But here's the important thing. I want you to understand what 25% means in spacing. So I'm going to quickly turn up the hardness all the way to here, and I'm going to open up the spacing like this or close it down. So look what I'm going to do here. When you paint, it's a series of circles. And if you have this on 100, your brush is going to look weird. Okay? So look at how when I put in all the softness, that's how you would paint dots on the screen. But the spacing needs to be on 25%. Let me now put it on 25% and hit the return key. Now let me put the softness all the way up to here. So I want you to understand why is the brush spacing on 25% important. If you don't understand that, then you're going to watch this movie. So please watch Understanding Brushes in Photoshop. Then, if you want to use a Wacom tablet, you better watch Understanding Wacom tablet painting, or electronic tablet painting, or pen tablet painting in Photoshop. Here is the practice movie that's mandatory, and it's an older movie, and I want you to watch it again just to get reinforced. You can stop it at any time that you feel you want to go into this movie, which is where I paint the movie. So this was updated for 2020, and it should be pretty accurate. Let me make sure it clicks and it works. So to open up YouTube, just go to that little arrow, click it. Hopefully there's not an ad.
Canvas, and you can see I have
now,
5 painted mirror.
Please, when I show you this, it says week 5 painted mirror. Well, I've changed it to week 8, so don't panic with this. Just go by the actual, let me go back to here. Just go back to the actual module, and you can see it's week 8 painted mirror. Because you always change around things, but I don't have time to do a million new movies every single semester, and that movie is fine. So after you get past the fact that I say it's week 5, watch the movie, follow along. When you're finished, put it in the Painted Mirror assignment Dropbox and answer the Painted Mirror discussion summary. And these are student examples down here of beautiful painted products that they learned. Let me bring over my folder. And here is the Painted Student Project PDF, which I'm letting you have. And these are all projects that students have done after they've watched and learned how to paint. And there's the toaster. So now you know how the artist painted that toaster. She's actually a professional painter now, having a really great living painting in Photoshop every single day. Anyway, I hope you will enjoy this week. And let's move on to the next assignment, which is week 9 to 12, design or illustration. So after you're done, there will be a movie in both of those. Not maybe the exact movie this is what is due for that week, or the whatever set of weeks that is. But enjoy the Painted Mirror movie, and please remember, it's not about grades. It's about learning and about being good in Photoshop and about understanding, in this case, the painting theory. See you on the next one.